Hello guys, welcome to lesson number 33 in our drawing series, Drawing Techniques for Beginners. Last lesson we planned our Converse All-Star trainer out using the grid method, and as you can see I've got rid of all of my lines and made a few adjustments here and there, but I'm quite happy with the outline that we've got. We're going to be focusing today on the 2B, and I'm going to have a little bit of 2H. I've been sort of looking at the drawing, and one of the areas that I really want to emphasize is this texture that we've got in this corner of the heel here, and the texture on the shoelaces. Now, as most of you are aware, when we're doing these types of drawings, we're not going to leave anything white, but I might just have a light coating of 2H in that area there. So without further ado, we're just going to start with some of these darkest areas. If you've followed any of my videos before, you do realise that I like to work in the dark areas. So I'm just going to start to bring out some of this dark area, sort of towards the back of this, of the heel, towards the back. I'm not sure. There's sort of a piece of material that goes all the way from top to bottom. So I'm just going to bring that, and what that's going to do is it's just going to give us a little bit of depth and dimension to start with. So what I'm using here is I'm using what's called a tapered stroke. I'm holding the pencil not too close to the point. I'm sort of halfway down, just so that I've got a very loose stroke. But what I'm using is a tapered stroke, and that means that I'm pulling the pencil towards me. I'm not scribbling. I'm not pushing the pencil forwards and backwards. It's quite difficult to pick up. I appreciate that it is quite difficult to pick up when you're watching the video, but I can assure you that what I'm doing is I'm pulling the pencil towards me and then taking it off. Now, don't feel that you've got to be as quick as me. I've been doing this for 3 years now, this type of technique, so I am getting quite fast at it, but don't feel you've got to go to the same speed as I am. What we're looking for is we're looking for a nice smooth coverage where we're laying down lots and lots of lines, and we will be turning the paper so that the lines aren't all just going in the same direction. Now, if you followed any of my other tutorials before, you know that I do like to use the harder pencils to start with, particularly if I'm doing a portrait, if I'm doing a face. But when we're doing material, I don't need necessarily that smooth look that I would need if I was drawing a face, particularly the baby's face that we did for one of our first projects. If this is the first time that you've visited my channel, thank you so much for clicking on that thumbnail. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to teach you guys the methods that I've picked up over the last 3.5 years. So I've done lots of online courses and bought lots of books and things like that. And I'm just going through some of the methods that I feel work for me. Over the last 3.5 years, I've obviously started developing the YouTube channel, and I've done lots of commissions for people. In actual fact, I've just finished one. It was actually two Tornado fighter jets that I've been drawing for a pilot that used to fly those. So drawing really has sort of changed my life. It's given me another income stream, but it's also given me a lot of pleasure in being able to create things. I guess I've always been fairly creative, and drawing was that sort of that next stage on for me. I'm going to try and keep the reference image in frame as best as I can. It's not ideal, but I'm looking at the back of this piece of material, and I can see that the material is sort of running from left to right as I'm looking at it. So I'm just going to try and bring some of that in initially. So I'm just laying a very fine layer of graphite down to begin with, and I don't know if you can see there on the camera, but I'm just leaving some slight gaps in between the lines to begin with, because as we look at our reference image here, we have got that sort of, I guess it's the way that the material is woven, but it does look, I'm wanting to use the word stripy, but it's very, 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 very close together stripes. So I'm just getting that with my initial layer of graphite. I don't need to be too precise with this to begin with, because what I know is going to happen is, as I bring the value up in the rest of this drawing and the rest of this area, the areas that I've left out, the initial areas that I've left out, those lines in between the pencil lines, almost where you can see the paper coming through, they're always going to remain slightly lighter. So as I add more value over the top of those, I'm still going to have that texture. Now what we're looking for in all of our drawings when we're trying to draw something from a reference image is we're looking for realism. And in order to create realism, just removing a flying ant. It's that time of year again over here in England. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to look for the areas that are going to give our brain the easiest opportunity of deciphering what we've got down on this paper. And contrast is for me, it's the most important. So I can see that this area at the back of the shoe here is slightly lighter than other areas. So very early on in your drawing, it's very important that you do identify the darkest and the lightest areas and keep reinforcing both of those. So in your lightest areas, keep using your erasers and protecting that light area as best as you can. And again, in your darkest areas, it's really, really important that you keep adding the value. Now, the technique that I'm teaching you, this layering technique, starting with some of our harder pencils and working our way up, in order to increase the value, we keep going up and down the pencil grade. So I may start with a 2B pencil, but that doesn't mean that that's the only pencil that I'm going to use there. I might go into a 2H pencil or an HB and then back up to a 4B in the same area, and just building layer upon layer of value, thinking of it almost as a series of pancakes on top of one another. It's a method that I learnt a few years back, and one that's really served me. It does take longer than a lot of other methods that require you to use a blending stump or a tissue paper or a Q-tip, but the finished result is, in my eyes, it's a better result. It looks more authentic. I like it when people look at my drawings from a distance and they don't necessarily realise that what they're looking at is a drawing. But then as they get closer, you can actually see the pencil marks. And I do like that. If people wanted a photograph, they'd just print one off and stick it on the wall, which is what a lot of people do. But we're in the business of making people believe that what they're looking at is a photograph. And then from there, making them realise that actually what they're looking at isn't a photograph. Now, if I want to add some value in this area, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the opposite direction to the texture that I want to try and keep. So I can see that we have got some more value in there. I'm nowhere near dark enough yet, but because I've gone with my texture from left to right, now as I'm applying my strokes from up to down in that vertical fashion, I can still keep that texture underneath. And what's happening is it's darkening up the areas that are already covered. So those initial lines that we laid down, they're getting darker, and they'll always remain darker than the areas around it. So we're going to be able to maintain those highlights. Now, as I come down this here, these curves, the edges that are sticking out, they're lighter. So I'm coming down into a recess here, which is going to be darker, and then we're coming out into a peak, and those peaks are lighter. And trying to create that, particularly in material, is really important. So looking at the areas that are the darkest, which will generally be the folds and the the bottom of these peaks and troughs, these troughs almost, and making sure that you accentuate that. So I can see there's another one in here now that I need to be darker, and either side of that they're lighter. And it's just paying attention to these small details that initially may feel, or you may feel like you're being overly picky and nobody's going to notice this, but if we can find 100 different opportunities to try and increase the value in a certain area to make the viewer's eye believe that what they're looking at is something that goes inwards, or a recess, or a hole, or in this case it's how the material is bending and folding, then what we're going to have when on the final drawing is we're going to have a brilliant culmination of all of these tiny little details that blow people away. I mentioned earlier that I've just finished drawing an aeroplane. That these two aeroplanes, they've took me, I would say they've taken me about 55 hours to draw in total, but the amount of planning and things like that that's had to go into it, it's taken me 5 months to do. Partly because I've had other things going on, including creating videos for this YouTube channel, but it's those small details that have taken me so long that actually when I look at the drawing in its finished state, they all come together beautifully. So I don't know if you can see this now, but we have got this rippled effect, which we've sort of mimicked from here. We've still kept the underlying texture from left to right, but I'm able to bring out some highlighted areas and some more recessed parts of the trainer, which again is a technique that we're going to be using a lot as we go through this drawing. Now we've got some white stitches at the top here, so I'm going to be very careful not to go into that area. We're going to try and leave those as best as we can. And I'm just going to get some initial value down. Now I don't want to lose this crease, so I'm just going to reinforce that now, because as I'm adding the value to the left of the crease, and I've also got the value to the right of the crease, I'm just losing my way a little bit, and that's a really important lesson to learn. It's very easy to lose edges, and what we're looking for is we're looking for hard and soft edges. Now this is a hard edge. We've got a piece of material that's sitting on top of another piece of material, so it's actually casting a shadow underneath there. So what I might do with that for now, just to bring that out slightly, is I might go with my 4B, because this is definitely one of those areas that I spoke about earlier, about identifying quickly on where the contrast is going to come in. And this line all the way down the inside of this piece of material is on our reference image here, it's black. Now what I do with all of my reference images, I turn them black and white. You can do that on your iPhone or your tablet or whatever it is. If you're using some software on a PC, it's very easy to do, to turn the image black and white. And that just helps us, because we're drawing black and white ultimately. If we're only using graphite, we never really get true black, which is why some of you will have seen the secret weapon that I get out towards the end, which is a black polychromos pencil, just to bring out some of those more realistic shadows and some of those black areas, because if we are looking at a black and white photograph, there is clearly black in there. And for me, it's what's missing sometimes in people's drawings. They're too scared to go dark. So right at the very end, and this will be one of those areas actually. Okay, so I'm quite happy that we've managed to sort of salvage that a little bit. So looking at our trainer now, we've got this wavy type of effect going on in there. So sort of following the line of this crease on the back. I'm just going to start laying down some lines, very similar to how we did on the back of the trainer when we went from left to right. And I'm just going to leave some gaps in between. And remember, this isn't going to be the value that we're going to end up with. We're going to go darker than this. But I just want to get this general pattern of this. I guess it's a canvas, isn't it? These trainers are made out of. So I guess it's a cotton or a nylon that's woven together very, very tightly, and you get a very, very durable type of material. So I'm just trying to recreate that in a small way. Very similar to when we've been drawing hair recently. Our last project was the beautiful Siberian Husky that we aptly named Shadow. And what I was talking about was when we're drawing hair, he's not getting bogged down with the details of every single hair and trying to get each hair perfect. But what we do is we look for a flow, almost like looking at the grain of the pattern of wood. And that's kind of what we're doing here. We're just getting a general feeling of the direction that this material is taking, or these strands of cotton are taking. I'm just laying some lines that are going to represent that. It's going to take a little while longer, of course, but I think the finished item will be wonderful. I really wanted to have a go at this. It was an image that really stuck out at me when I was looking through. I use an app called Pixabay, which is a free app. It's available on your mobile devices, and it's non-copyrighted images on there, and a lot of the images on there are very, very high quality, and there's some very abstract images on there, so there's a good amount of images for you to have a go at. But I was just flicking through there one evening and I came across this trainer, and I just like the textures, I like the layout. So I thought we'd give it a go as a project. Now I have recently been asking you to send me some reference images of things that you might like to draw in future projects. I had some brilliant photos and reference images, and I'm kind of getting the feeling that most of you are into drawing animals, which is fine by me. So we will definitely be looking at some of those in some future videos. Don't forget to check the group out, Tutorial Tuesdays, Beginner to Pro. Find that over on Facebook. Request to join and we'll welcome you with open arms. It's a really friendly group. We've surpassed the 2,700. We're sort of marching towards 3,000 people in the group now, which is unbelievable. When I first started it out and had the intentions of trying to release a few videos that taught people how to draw and taught people some of the methods and techniques that I'd learnt, I had visions of it being couple of hundred people. So don't be shy, come and show us some of your work and what you've been doing, and jump in with the lessons. Even if you're a seasoned pro, it's just really nice to see people joining in and posting their work and commenting, and I've even seen a few people sharing my lessons over on other art groups, so thank you so much for that. Yeah, by all means, go and do that. If it's helped you in the smallest of ways, if you think that there's going to be benefit from sharing it with others, then absolutely go for it. It's something I take great pleasure in. And it's been really odd flicking through Instagram and seeing lessons that I've taught, people putting their pictures up there and being proud of them, and reading some of the fantastic messages that some of you have been getting over on Instagram from other people saying, how talented you are and whatnot. And that's a really important thing for me, because it takes me back to when I was learning to draw, and those nice comments sometimes are what keep you going. And as this trainer goes towards this darker area here, this shadowed area, we're losing some of that texture. But I'm just going to put it in here anyway, because I know it's there. And I've spoken in depth on a lot of the videos about the ability to turn a drawing into something that looks better than a photograph. And I remember the first time somebody saying that to me, and I thought that can't be true. Now, what we're talking about is a photograph's a printed image, and unless you've got a unbelievable printer, what tends to happen a lot of the time is some of the detail is lost. So if I know this has a texture in there, I'm going to add it in, even if we lose it a little bit as we go darker. So we've got a much lighter area here. I'm tempted to leave that. I am going to leave that for now. I don't envisage this being a very time-consuming project. I think we'll have this done in a couple of hours. So maybe 4 lessons. I like to try and keep these lessons to about half an hour, just simply because I think sometimes people have got such busy lives that sitting down and drawing sometimes is a little bit of a luxury. And when I first started to draw, I literally threw myself right in at the deep end, and I would stay up until the early hours, 2, 3 in the morning. So it was no issue to me, having a 2-hour long session that I was drawing along with. But I do know that sometimes it's a little bit off-putting. So like I say, I'm trying to keep these down to about half an hour. Some overrun slightly. I just get in the flow of drawing. Okay, so I'm kind of happy with that. It looks a little bit like corduroy, which I guess it's not a million miles off. So I'm going to start adding some more value now, and I'm going to do exactly the same as what we did initially on the back of the trainer. Now I'm going to start working in these darker areas. So I've just marked out initially these slightly shadowed areas, and this comes across the top of the badge. So again, just using my tapered stroke, just getting the general layout and shape. And even within this shadowed area, I'm looking for the darkest area. Now I can see that it comes up and we have another crease just underneath that. I'm just paying attention to the light source, and we can see that the light source is sort of coming. It's coming from this area. I'm guessing from this area, top left, looking at the way that the shadow's lying. So I'm just trying to incorporate that as much as I can in as many of the details as possible. And I can see that we have a slight crease in this area. Now again, a little bit like laying that initial texture down, because I've got these darker areas already there now, they are always going to be the darkest areas, so it's going to give me an opportunity not to lose them, like we almost did on the edge of this material. I can see that this comes down and into that piece of material, and then I've got another crease in this area. This is the sort of the darkest area of the image. I'm still using the tapered stroke, and what you'll probably also notice is I haven't sharpened my pencil yet. And that's because what I'm actually doing is I'm turning my pencil every few strokes. And because I'm laying it on its edge, because I'm holding the pencil further away from the end, the point, I can actually get it to sit at an angle. It's sort of less than 45 degrees. And the benefit of that is it almost self-sharpens. So I don't have to sharpen too often, which again is another fantastic opportunity to keep your pencil sharp so you can keep the details in there, but it also saves you money because you're not sharpening as much, which means you're not shortening the pencils as quickly, particularly in your with your softer pencils, your 2 to 4 to 6B, maybe even higher than that you may be going. Yeah, so if we can have a bit of a money saving exercise as well, then we're all winners. So don't forget, keep turning that pencil. So just paying attention to how far up, how close to the bottom of this badge this shadow creeps. I've got some very dark areas in there, but even within that I can see some lighter areas. So just being aware of that. So now I can start to actually add a little bit of value in the rest of it, knowing that I've got those important shadowed areas in. Can now start to work around the other areas and bring the value up a little bit. Don't forget, leave your Instagram names down below or over on the Facebook group, and let's follow one another and help each other grow on that platform. I know how difficult it is growing an art channel or an art platform. I've been doing it for 3 years now, and it's difficult at times. So as much support as we can give each other, the better, in my eyes. So I'm at Artistic Nick, N1K at the end. NIK was taken, or at least it was taken on the YouTube, which I think was my first social media platform. Possibly the Facebook page was. So yes, I went with the N1K, and it's kind of stuck, I guess. It's slightly different. I've not seen many N1Ks out there. I guess it would make a good number plate for a car if I make it as a world famous artist and YouTuber. So as I'm going across this texture that I've already laid down, I'm still keeping it underneath, which is fantastic, and it's very subtle. But I think one of the most important things to try and capture in any type of realistic drawing is subtleties. Subtleties with eyelashes, and subtleties with types of material. Let the brain figure out what it's looking at. Let it interpret it. We have these wonderful things in our heads called imagination, and we only need to prod it in a certain direction and we can come up with all kinds of things. You imagine dreaming. You dream every single night and your brain produces these images that are anatomically perfect. So all we need to do is give our imagination a gentle push in the right direction, and we end up seeing things. And the illusion breaks as you get closer. I think that's the beauty of it. I guess it's like a good magician. We all know that what we're looking at when the magician's showing us the card trick is a trick, and there's some sleight of hand going on, but it's the suspense and the belief, and that what you're looking at is magic, and that's what happens when we're looking at a brilliant pencil drawing. We see things and we know it's a drawing, and we know there's not really thousands and thousands and thousands of hair strands there, but it looks like that. And that's the wonder of it. That's what always captivated me. I remember being in a class at school years and years and years ago, and I think it maybe was design and technology, and there was a book, and in the book somebody had drawn an orange, and I remember it vividly, and the orange was photorealistic. It was, it looked like a real orange, and I couldn't believe it, that what I was looking at wasn't a photograph of an orange. I knew it was a painting. Obviously it said underneath that this is a painting and who it was by, but I sort of remember from that moment on thinking, wow, somebody out there can produce something with pencils or crayons or paint that is indistinguishable from a photograph. And I guess without realising that sort of set me on this path to wanting to create things like that. Now, I don't think I've quite created anything that is what you would consider absolutely photorealistic. I don't know. I'm happy with some of the work I've done, but I'm definitely getting closer. So just working in this lighter area now. And because we've got those initial layers down, I'm still keeping hold of those shadows. And that's really important, because that's going to give my mind the sense of the direction the light is going in, and that this piece of the material is going in and this piece is coming out. This is raised, this is sunken. And we can do all of that just by changing the values, subtly changing the values. So like I did earlier, I'm going to come in with my 4B now, and I'm just going to bring those values up a little bit, just around the darkest area, which is the underside of the shadow. So I am getting the impression that the light source is definitely coming from this left hand corner up where my fingers are. So I'm looking at the timer now, and I can see that we've reached that 34-minute mark. So I'm sort of going to leave it there for tonight. I'm quite happy with the progress that we're making. We've got a lot more value to bring up, but you can see the kind of process that we're going through. And I think once we've got this area completed, that's the bulk of the drawing done. That's where the contrast's going to be in relation to the white rubber. So carry on with that. I'm going to do a little bit more in this area, so that hopefully for the next lesson we're going to be a little bit darker in most of these areas, and we can just start playing with some of these highlighted dots and some of the areas around the back of the trainer there. But thanks so much once again for supporting the channel and being so supportive over on the Facebook group. I'm having a real blast making these videos for you. Don't forget, leave me a comment down below, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys over in the group, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Thanks so much for watching. Hit subscribe, smack the notifications button, follow me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.